India was supposed to be the story of this century, the world's largest democracy, the fastest growing major economy, a young English-speaking workforce, a strategic location that every superpower wanted to be friends with. And then, almost simultaneously, a series of events hit that have raised serious questions about whether India's rise is as inevitable as everyone assumed. The Middle East War, the AI revolution, Operation Sindoor, a fertilizer shortage threatening the next harvest, a currency, rupee, that keeps weakening, and summers that are getting dangerous. In this video, I want to give you an honest, global view, the kind of analysis that foreign investors, defense analysts, and economic experts are actually having about India right now. Not what you hear on Indian cable news, what the world sees. Some of you might have a totally different view, which I respect too. Let's begin. India's promise, what was the story? First, let's quickly establish what made India such a compelling story in the first place. Because the contrast with today is what makes this video worth making. After the 1991 liberalization, India underwent a remarkable transformation. It became the world's back office, IT services, business process outsourcing, call centers, software development, all powered by a massive English-speaking, STEM-educated workforce that cost a fraction of what the same work costs in the West. The country had everything going for it. The Indian IT sector contributes 7.3% of GDP, employs about 5.8 million technology professionals, and accounts for around 45% of India's total services exports. A young demographic dividend, the world's largest democracy. A founding member of BRICS, managing neutrality between great powers. A huge diaspora sending remittances home. Strategic location in the Indian Ocean that made every major power want to partner with India. The word future superpower was being used. The phrase middle class of a billion people was being used. Then a series of shocks hit, almost simultaneously. Here are those. Challenge. 1. The oil import dependence trap. Challenge number 1, and the most immediate right now, is India's dangerous dependence on imported crude oil. India's oil import dependence has climbed to 89% of its total oil consumption. Nearly 9 out of every 10 barrels India burns every day comes from abroad. In 2025, India imported around 5 million barrels of oil every single day. Petroleum, oil and petroleum products constitute around 30% of India's total imports. Think about what that means in practice. Every time there is conflict in the Middle East, every time the US dollar appreciates, or crude prices go higher, or a tanker is seized, every time the Strait of Hormuz is threatened, India's import bill spikes, its trade deficit widens, and the Indian rupee comes under pressure. The Indian rupee recently breached Rs.95 per US dollar, hitting an all-time low with over 5.5% depreciation year-to-date in 2026 and over 28% depreciation in the last 5 years. The nominal effective exchange rate, the rupee's value against 40 key trading partners, declined about 8% in 2025, while the real effective exchange rate fell nearly 10%. The Middle East conflicts have made this dramatically worse. With the Strait of Hormuz disrupted, India's crude import costs are surging. Foreign portfolio investors, who are essential for India's capital markets, pull money out when they see currency and oil risk combined. And when FIIs pull out, the rupee weakens further, which makes oil imports even more expensive, a vicious cycle India has no quick escape from. Challenge 2. The AI disruption. India's services model under threat. Challenge number 2 is more structural and more permanent, and it is the one that should worry India most over the next decade. India's economic growth model was built on being the world's services provider. But the nature of the services the world needs is changing faster than India is adapting. Consider what has happened in the global technology landscape in just the last 5 years. NVIDIA, a single American chip company, is now valued at over $4.8 trillion. TSMC of Taiwan, the company that makes the chips that power almost every AI system in the world, has a market capitalization larger than the entire Nifty 50 index of India's biggest listed companies. NVIDIA is bigger than the market cap of all listed companies of India on its national stock exchange. Samsung of South Korea and the entire Chinese tech ecosystem building on domestic AI infrastructure have all grown tremendously in the last few years. What did these countries have that India didn't? Semiconductor manufacturing, hardware, data centers, energy infrastructure for AI compute, LLM models, hyperscalers and innovation stemming out of campuses, the physical backbone of the AI revolution. India had none of it. India had programmers. And the AI revolution is automating exactly what Indian programmers do: code, test, support, process. In FY 2025 to 2026, the top 5 Indian IT firms added only about 4,800 employees, a clear shift from mass hiring to selective specialist recruitment. Compare that to over 250,000 net hiring by the same companies in FY 2022. It's a stark reduction. The stocks of India's IT giants tell the story clearly. TCS, Infosys, and Wipro are all significantly below their peak valuations, as global clients reduce headcount requirements, automate repetitive work with AI agents, and cut contract renewals. All these companies are trading at a 5-year low and down over 40% from their peak share price. Yes, over 40%. Foreign investors who decide where in the world to deploy capital looked at India versus Taiwan versus South Korea versus the United States, and saw India as a country that was well positioned for the world of 2010, but potentially on the wrong side of the world of 2030. The US NASDAQ 100 has given a return of 39% last year. The Canadian TSX has given a return of 36%. The Chinese Shanghai Stock Index gave a return of 24%. The Korean KOSPI Index gave 156% in a year, while India's Nifty 50 Index is down 1.9% in the last 1 year. Add to this that the foreign investors will lose further due to the currency depreciation of 13% in last year. That is a harsh assessment. India has huge potential to adapt. Its software talent can pivot to AI, and its engineers can build AI applications. But the window to make that pivot is narrowing, and the policy moves needed. Massive investment in semiconductor manufacturing, data centers, and energy grids have been slow in coming. Challenge 3, Operation Sindoor, the military reputation question. Challenge number 3 is the most sensitive, and I want to be careful to give you the global view, not the Indian or Pakistani propaganda version. In April 2025, 26 civilians were killed in a terrorist attack in Pahalgam in Kashmir. India blamed Pakistan-backed groups. On May 7, 2025, India launched Operation Sindoor, airstrikes on 9 locations inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The first time since 1971 that India struck across the settled international border, while there have been surgical strikes across the line of control earlier as well, but not across the settled international border. Inside India, the operation was celebrated as a decisive military response by the Indian public. But here's what the international community observed, and I want to emphasize, this is the global strategic assessment, not India's or Pakistan's. Before I give you the outcome, let me explain something fundamental about how modern warfare actually works, because it is the key to understanding everything that happened in this conflict. There are exactly 4 powers in the world that operate a full global constellation of navigation satellites, and these satellites are the invisible backbone of every modern war. The 4 global navigation satellite systems are GPS by the United States, GLONASS by Russia, Beidou by China, and Galileo by the European Union. These are not just navigation tools for your phone. Their military versions provide real-time, centimeter-level precision for every guided missile, every drone strike, every aircraft targeting system on Earth. Without access to one of these 4 systems, a modern military simply cannot conduct precision warfare. But more than navigation, the intelligence agencies of these 4 powers, the US, Russia, China, and the European Union, have full satellite imagery of every conflict happening on Earth, in real time. Every aircraft movement, every troop deployment, every missile impact, every radar activation is visible to these 4 powers within minutes. What this means is simple but profound. No matter what your cable news channel tells you about who won or lost a battle, the governments in Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and Brussels know the exact truth. Every claim, every counterclaim, every downed aircraft, they see it in real time from space. Leaders in these 4 countries are never watching the conflict through the fog of war that civilian populations face. Now apply this to Operation Sindoor. India uses GPS, the American system, for its precision strike guidance and has a huge dependence on the USA. The deeper strategic issue, Pakistan was supported by China unconditionally in the conflict. Chinese satellite navigation, the Beidou system, gave Pakistani forces the precision strike capability. Chinese J-10C fighter jets of Pakistan performed effectively in beyond visual range combat where fighter planes of both countries didn't cross the border, but fought using air-to-air missiles from beyond visual range of 100 to 300 kilometers. Chinese electronic warfare and cyber capabilities were deployed. They yielded results, and the world noticed. Chinese officials amplified the findings across strategic forums and defense expos, highlighting Pakistan's performance as proof of the combat readiness of Chinese platforms. Pakistan subsequently signed arms export deals for Pakistani-manufactured J-10 jets with multiple countries. Saudi Arabia upgraded its defense relationship with Pakistan. The U.S., through new IMF credit lines, engaged Pakistan's leadership more directly. Pakistan became a key mediator in the Iran ceasefire negotiations. Russia warmed up with Pakistan by offering investments in its steel industry. Despite India's conventional superiority, the Pakistani Air Force shot down Indian fighter jets, including French Rafales, Russian MiG-29, and a Sukhoi, while India's Chief of Defense Staff, in an interview with Reuters, agreed on losing aircrafts but didn't confirm a number. But the fact that the Indian Air Force had to withdraw all jets from combat for 2 days after just the start of the conflict highlighted the modern electronic warfare and signal hacking capabilities of Pakistanis, helped by the Chinese. The Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung noted that the reported downing of an Indian Rafale by a Pakistani air defense system raised concerns for Western military technologies, and that Operation Sindoor appeared to have turned into a disaster. The full explanation of what exactly happened will require a separate video, so I'm not going into details here. Now here is the deeper strategic point, the one that explains why these conflicts always end in quick ceasefires brokered by great powers. Both India and Pakistan hold ammunition reserves for just around 30 days of intense combat. A conflict beyond a few weeks would need them to have backing by any of the great powers for the continuous supply of ammunition, access to navigation systems and spares for fighter jets, etc. So the global powers hold a considerably say in brokering a ceasefire if they feel that's the time. The consequence for India. India's vulnerabilities complicated its deepening Quad alignment and raised questions about interoperability gaps between its diverse inventory of Western, Russian, and indigenous systems. The Western world, which wanted India as a sole dominant force to counter China in the region, now sees a more complex picture and warmed up with its arch-rival Pakistan. Challenge 4. The Iran War's direct hit to fertilizer and food. Challenge number 4 is the most immediate crisis hitting ordinary Indians right now, and it is barely covered in mainstream coverage. India is particularly dependent on the Middle East for fertilizers, sourcing more than 40% of its urea and phosphate fertilizers from the region. In 2024, up to 30% of global fertilizer trade passed through the Strait of Hormuz, from the Persian Gulf to export markets, as well as an estimated 20% of LNG, a key fertilizer feedstock. With the strait disrupted since February 28th, the impact on India's agricultural sector is now critical. Fertilizer plants in India are operating at around half capacity because of shortages. Farmers across India are searching for fertilizer that simply isn't available. India's critical Kharif planting season opens in June and July, and if supply remains disrupted through May, India will inevitably face a genuine phosphate shortage at a critical moment. Urea prices have jumped to around $700 per metric ton, up from $400 before the war began, a nearly 75% increase. India's agriculture sector employs nearly 45% of its workforce. A bad harvest doesn't just mean less food, it means reduced rural income, lower FMCG consumption, and less demand for everything from two-wheelers to mobile phones. The Indian economy's entire consumer demand story runs through agricultural income. And alongside fertilizer, LPG shortages are hitting urban India hard. LNG imports, essential for nitrogen fertilizer production, as well as cooking gas, have been severely disrupted by the Hormuz closure. Small restaurants are shutting. Migrant workers are returning to their home states because they cannot afford gas cylinders at black market rates. This is the Iran War's impact on India at ground level, and not in macroeconomic abstractions, but in farmers without fertilizer and restaurant owners without gas. Challenge 5. The heat crisis. Climate change is already costing India. Challenge number 5 is the one that will compound every other challenge on this list over the coming decades. In 2026, India is having one of its worst summers on record, with climate scientists indicating that heat waves are increasing in length, intensity, and frequency. Reports state that over 92 of the 100 hottest cities on Earth in April 2026 are currently in India. The economic cost of this is staggering and underappreciated. India lost 247 billion potential labor hours in 2024, with agriculture absorbing 56% of the losses. McKinsey projects GDP losses of 2.5 to 4.5% by 2035 if adaptation lags. India could account for 34 million of the projected 80 million global job losses from heat stress-associated productivity decline by 2030. India's economic miracle has been built on a workforce that works outside, in agriculture, construction, delivery, and manufacturing. As temperatures rise, that workforce becomes less productive, gets sick more often, and earns less. This is a structural drag on growth that no government policy fully addresses yet. Challenge 6. The policy and governance risk. Challenge number 6 is the one that is hardest to discuss openly, but foreign investors discuss it constantly. India has immense potential as a destination for long-term foreign investment. Its market size, its young workforce, and its democratic institutions are all genuine advantages. But several patterns have made foreign companies cautious about committing large amounts of capital. Retrospective taxation, the most infamous example being the Vodafone and Cairn Energy cases, where India retroactively changed tax rules and then pursued foreign companies for billions. Both eventually went to international arbitration, and India lost. But the reputational damage to India as a rule of law destination was significant and lasted years. The use of investigative agencies, the Enforcement Directorate, and the Income Tax Department against companies and individuals in ways that international investors perceived as selectively politically motivated, and the rise of domestic conglomerates with regulatory advantages, where foreign companies in sectors from e-commerce to retail to telecom found themselves competing on an uneven playing field against locally politically connected players. None of these is unique to India. But for a country that needs $100 billion a year in foreign investment to sustain its growth ambitions, the perception of policy instability and uneven enforcement is a real cost measured in investment that went to Vietnam, to Indonesia, to Mexico instead. Challenge 7, immigration crackdown. India's diaspora advantage under pressure. Challenge number 7 is one that most Indian analysts miss entirely: the impact of the global anti-immigration wave on India specifically. India's diaspora is one of its greatest assets, the largest diaspora in the world by some measures. CEOs of Google, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, MasterCard, Indian origin leaders running the world's most powerful companies. Remittances of over $120 billion a year flowing back to India, the largest of any country in the world. But the political environment in the countries that host most of this diaspora, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, has shifted dramatically. H-1B visa approvals have tightened. The pathway from work permit to permanent residency has extended from years to decades for Indian nationals due to per-country caps and conservative political waves in the Western world. The political rhetoric in multiple Western countries has explicitly called out Indian immigration levels. This is not just about existing immigrants, it is about the pipeline. Fewer young Indians can go abroad, establish themselves, send money home, and eventually invest back in India. The diaspora flywheel that has powered India's middle-class growth is slowing. Potential in the path forward. India is not a country in crisis. Let me be clear about that. It is the world's 6th largest economy by nominal GDP. It is growing at 6.7% a year. Its young population is its greatest long-term asset. Its strategic location makes it indispensable to every major power. Its domestic consumer market of 1.4 billion people moving toward middle-class incomes can genuinely be the most exciting growth story of the next 30 years. But the path to that potential runs through some very specific decisions that need to be made now. India needs to invest massively in its own AI and semiconductor ecosystem, not just software talent, but hardware, data centers, and energy infrastructure. It needs to accelerate renewable energy to reduce oil dependence. It needs policy stability and genuine rule of law consistency to attract the foreign capital its ambitions require. It needs to adapt its cities and its agriculture to the heat reality that is already here. The global events of 2025 and 2026, the Iran War, Operation Sindoor, the AI revolution, and the immigration backlash have exposed vulnerabilities that were always there but easy to ignore during the good times. The question is whether India converts this moment of pressure into a moment of genuine reform, or whether it doubles down on the same model and hopes external conditions improve. I genuinely wish India and its 1.4 billion people the best in navigating this. The potential is real. The challenges are real. And the outcome is not yet written. I'm not an expert. In the next few weeks, we are releasing similar honest assessments of how global events are impacting the US, Pakistan, Japan, South Korea, and China. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss those. Please share in the comments on what topic you want the next video to be. See you next week.